TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, and we have a massive and fantastic show ahead for you today. A lot of lunacy to get to, including some videos and audio that have been unearthed featuring that Walsh guy over at the Daily Wire, Matt Walsh, there we go, that's his first name, saying some pretty hideous things, including defending the idea of 16-year-old girls getting impregnated, wanting to go back to the days when that was normal. These are the people who want to protect the children. We also have another lunatic in the form of a gubernatorial candidate in Michigan who is going around taking photos of children to accuse them of being furries. We'll get to that a little later. But there are important stories to get to, including a fire that took place at an Amazon warehouse in New York. You probably won't be shocked at what the employers expected the employees to do, both during and after that fire, so we'll talk about that. And in the second hour, John Iadarola will not be with me today, but Jordan Ewell will be. He's in Los Angeles, he'll be in studio, and we'll be doing the second hour and the bonus episode for our members together. And as always, you can become a member by going to tyt.com/join, or if you're watching us on YouTube, just click on that join button and you can become a member that way. People are saying they've been really enjoying our members only bonus episodes lately, and I don't blame them. They've been pretty fire. So if you're missing out, if you're not a member, not only do you get that exclusive content, you also get to support the show, keep us sustainable. And I love that we're only accountable to you guys. So thank you for that. Without further ado, let's get to our first story, something that's not really getting much attention, but it certainly deserves it. You just watched a video featuring a fire that broke out at an Amazon warehouse in New York, JFK 8 to be specific. And that's also the warehouse that happened to unionize in Staten Island. Now, when workers rightfully protested in response to the safety hazard, Amazon actually retaliated by illegally suspending dozens of them. And I'll give you their reasoning for why they did that in just a moment. But first, why don't we get to the details of what transpired during the fire, what the employees were expected to do, why they protested, and what that led to. Well, the fire ended up breaking out in a trash compactor on Monday afternoon. Seth Goldstein, who happens to be a lawyer for the Amazon Labor Union, ALU, said that the compactor had been smoking for weeks before the fire. And he continues to say, God forbid they have to replace the compactor and lose their profits. By the way, how much could that possibly cost when you consider how much they make in profits? One of the reasons people are unionizing at Amazon is because the employer cares about profits and doesn't care about their lives. Where's the transparency here? Well, something we talk about a lot on this show is that the way the system is set up literally makes it so these employers, so that Amazon puts profit over human lives. Because their number one priority, their number one responsibility is to their shareholders, not to their employees. They see their employees as a cost. So the idea of keeping their employees safe, even as a fire is breaking out in the warehouse, that might be costly. The idea of preventing fires from taking place by replacing faulty equipment, it's gonna cut into the profits a little bit. Fiduciary responsibility. This is how the system works. Now, let me give you more details. A fire crew was sent to the warehouse. No one was injured, luckily. And day shift employees were sent home early with pay. That was the right thing to do. Sending the employees home early, there's a fire, they shouldn't be there. Even if the fire doesn't get to them, you have to keep in mind that we're talking about toxic fumes, we're talking about unhealthy air quality. You don't want them to be there. But then things get a little sketchy. The night shift employees were not informed of the fire at all. They had no idea that it happened. They show up to work and they notice that things are a little weird, smells strange. When they arrived to the warehouse, the night shift employees were taken into the break room and told that they had to work despite the fire that had just occurred. At this point, the warehouse is still pretty dangerous. It, according to the employees, overwhelmingly smelled like smoke from the fire. Workers were concerned about inhaling these toxic fumes, as they should be, and some couldn't even breathe. In fact, one of the workers ended up being hospitalized as a result of being there, and as a result of inhaling those toxic fumes. So this is no joke. There was a fire in that warehouse. It was unsafe, and rather than ensuring that conditions in that warehouse were safe enough for employees to come back, they said, no, you gotta come back to work, night shift, you gotta be here. Now, instead of returning to work, around 650 of the workers simply refused to leave the break room. So there they are, they're protesting, and they're doing so by engaging in this work stoppage. The work stoppage lasted nearly 3 hours, according to the ALU, and almost 100 workers marched into the manager's office to demand that workers get sent home with pay, much like the day shift workers did. Now, they also were given a pretty insulting offer for a pay raise. Workers also protested an offer of a, 25-cent raise that the company had made in the past week, which the union called insulting, and it is insulting when you consider inflation, and said would amount to a pay cut due to inflation and the fact that workers at the warehouse still yet to have their union recognized by the $1.2 trillion company. So while the immediate situation involving this fire and the toxic fumes was enough for them to engage in this work stoppage, there were other issues at play as well, including the insulting offer to raise their pay by a whopping 25 cents an hour. Yesterday, Amazon decided, oh, you know what? We should probably listen to our workers. Just kidding, no, they didn't do that. They decided they would retaliate against the workers who decided to engage in the work stoppage. And so 10 of whom were union leaders, by the way. 10 of them were retaliated against, union leaders. The ALU has stated that the number could actually be as high as 80 employees in total who were retaliated against. Now, company spokesman Paul Flanagan said that while Amazon respects workers' rights to protest, no, they don't. It is not appropriate for employees to occupy active workspaces, break rooms, or thoroughfares in its warehouses. But that's actually incorrect. As Seth Goldstein mentioned, he called the suspensions of the Staten Island workers, quote, a violation of workers' rights to join in a collective action about the terms and conditions of their employment. The workers didn't feel safe going back to work. They were engaging in rights that have been protected for 85 years under the National Labor Relations Act, Goldstein said. And Seth is correct. So the Seattle Times fact-checked this, and under federal labor law, employees have a right to engage in so-called concentrated activity for mutual aid or protection. In this case, they're seeking protection from toxic fumes in a warehouse that just experienced a fire. The union said that it intended to file an unfair labor practice charge in response to the suspensions. Now, look, we have talked about the conditions in which these warehouse workers have been working at Amazon. Incredibly hot, conditions during the summertime, the refusal to use fans or AC, the refusal to give these workers necessary breaks, this obsession with tracking how many bathroom breaks they take, how long those bathroom breaks last. Even when you talk about some of the delivery drivers for Amazon, we did a story talking about how the demands are so unbearable. They have so much on their plate that the delivery drivers are reduced to defecating in plastic bags in their vehicles. So none of this really surprises me, but I hope for anyone who might have been on the fence in regard to whether or not it makes sense for workers to organize, hopefully stories like this convince you that it is a good idea. That if you don't have collective bargaining, if you don't have organized workers, well, those workers really have no say over their working conditions, over their pay, over the way they're treated, even when there's a disaster in the warehouse they're working in. So just to give you a few other examples, though Amazon employed only about 33% of warehouse workers in 2021, it was responsible for 49% of warehouse injuries that year. Also, the report's authors say that the reason for Amazon's high injury rate is the company's strict quotas and obsession with speed, which it monitors using invasive surveillance systems that track workers' every move. The company also pushes hurt workers to keep working while they are recovering, even if the work will perpetuate the injury or make it worse. So there are certain musculoskeletal disorders like carpal tunnel or back pain. Those things are common among Amazon workers, according to an investigation that was done. So this is a real problem for warehouse workers. This is a real problem for people who are employed at Amazon. You might come across some of Amazon's cheesy ads where they purport to treat their workers really well and we pay for their educational experiences. But fact of the matter is, when you're dealing with a situation where your employer is expecting you to come into a warehouse that just had a fire and you can still smell smoke, there are still toxic fumes. No, that company does not actually care about your well-being and your health. And I'm really glad that these workers got together, did this sit-in and decided, no, we're not gonna take it. We're not gonna put our lives and bodies on the line just to maintain, the profits that our employer demands of us. We're not gonna take it. And I love that they had the power to do that. Now, the real question is, will there be consequences for Amazon after they decided to illegally suspend dozens of their employees who took part in this? We'll see. We'll keep an eye on this story and update you guys as we learn more. But it is telling that right now, you have politicians running around fear-mongering about high school students dressing as furries and using litter boxes and school bathrooms, when in reality, you have workers who are being used and abused like crazy all across this country. They don't care about that. They want to empower that, but they gotta distract from the fact that they want to empower that by pointing to whatever squirrel, whatever made up culture war issue they need to distract you with. And today, apparently, it's furries, and we'll get to that later in the show. All right, let's move on.
You're telling me Walker used his money to reportedly pay some skank for an abortion. So I don't care if Herschel Walker paid to abort endangered baby eagles. I want control of the Senate.
Well, Dana Lausch, just gave away the whole game. Real transparent there, real candid. Because fact of the matter is, and I've said this a billion times on the show, the right wing never has and never will care about abortion. They will exploit the issue of reproductive rights and abortion to accumulate power. And that's what Loesch was saying right then and there. I don't care if Herschel Walker, a Republican Senate candidate in Georgia, paid for a former girlfriend to get an abortion after he impregnated her. I don't care about that. I care about power. I care about him winning. I care about a Republican sitting in that seat. That's what matters. We just use the anti-abortion narrative to accumulate power, that's it. And by the way, Herschel Walker himself has certainly engaged in those talking points. He's one of the most extreme in terms of wanting to ban abortions in any and all cases, even if the mother's life is at risk as a result of that pregnancy. It's very House of the Dragon, to be honest with you. Anyway, now she wanted to further clarify her point by saying, quote, one guy who reportedly paid for a girlfriend's abortion compared to one guy who wants to pay for everyone's abortions. So her argument is, well, Herschel Walker's the lesser of two evils because Raphael Warnock, the Democratic incumbent he's running against, wants us to pay for everyone's abortions, except that's not true. And we literally have laws that prevent the use of taxpayer money on abortions. It's called the Hyde Amendment. She knows that. She knows that. Dana Loesch should just say what she really means. As a spokesperson for the NRA for a long time, I think it's abundantly clear that people like Dana Loesch doesn't care at all about the lives of children, literal living, breathing children who get shot up in school campuses across this country. The idea that she cares about zygotes and fetuses is laughable to say the least, but she cares about power. She cares about Republican control, and that's what this is about. Now, let's not be too hard on her because she's just one example of the diseased thinking that we see in the Republican Party. In fact, after news broke of Herschel's scandal, he was actually rewarded by Republican donors and voters because he raised quite a bit of money. Let's go to this tweet. Walker campaign manager Scott Paradise told staff this morning the Daily Beast story was a setback, but that fundraising was surging after Walker's denial. In fact, Paradise mentioned the Access Hollywood episode, saying Trump still made it to the White House per person familiar. Of course Trump made it to the White House because it ain't about the family values messaging that they purport to believe in. It ain't about the anti-abortion messaging that they purport to believe in. They don't believe in any of that. It's all about power. The hypocrisy has always been there. It's always slapped us in the face over and over again. And for some reason, some portion of Republican voters still believe that Republicans represent the party of family values. And again, it's about exploiting those issues for power. So I want to give you some previous examples. One of my favorite examples, I know I've mentioned him on the show a lot, Scott DesJarlais, who happens to still be a member of Congress. He is a Republican congressman from the state of Tennessee. It's 4th congressional district. He turns out was caught up in an abortion-related scandal himself back in 2014. According to testimony during his divorce trial, the Tennessee congressman supported his ex-wife's decision to get abortions, two abortions, not one but two, before their marriage. The former doctor also allegedly pressured a 24-year-old patient he was having an affair with to also get an abortion. Even after all that information came out, DesJarlais still had the gall to vote for anti-abortion bills and boast of having a 100% pro-life voting record. Yes, because don't you know, guys, they like to latch on to those culture war issues, knowing full well that if they succeed in getting legislation passed in regard to those issues, the only people who really end up suffering is everyone else. They've got all the resources necessary to get to where they need to go to get the legal abortion. For all the other women out there, anyone else who doesn't have the resources, anyone else who might be desperate, if you gotta resort to the coat hanger, sorry. I mean, DesJarlais needs political power. Herschel Walker needs political power. Dana Loesch is very concerned that they might lose that Senate seat. They can't do that. They gotta make sure they earn that Senate seat by lying to the American people about how good and moral they are, while simultaneously engaging in all sorts of questionable activity and behavior behind the scenes. You know, it's amazing because socially, I'm obviously pretty left, pretty far left, okay? I have a live and let live kind of mentality. But I don't know, man, I look at my life and I look at my marriage and it is so wholesome compared to some of the garbage you see among Republican politicians and candidates. I mean, insanely wholesome compared to what DesJarlais was up to. Banging 24-year-old patients and then forcing them to have abortions? Really? And then he goes around moralizing about reproductive rights? By the way, quick video that CNN put together at the time of DesJarlais' behavior.
We really appreciate this big win. It was, it's nice to have a great margin of victory. I think
Congressman Scott DesJarlais is the pro-life Republican and doctor who slept with multiple patients, got one pregnant, demanded she and his expecting wife get abortions.
Is that family values? He got reelected. Herschel Walker makes $50,000 in fundraising on the night the Daily Beast story broke. It was a surge in donations. DesJarlais gets reelected. He's still a congressman. He's cheating on his wife left and right. Testified that he, urged both women, his ex-wife and the 24-year-old he got pregnant, urged them to get abortions. It's amazing, it really is. And by the way, we're now learning just how little the Republican establishment really cares about abortion. Because it turns out that Herschel Walker's campaign knew about it months before it even came out through the Daily Beast report. So this was reported in Politico, and I thought it was fascinating. So there's a Republican strategist who's involved with the campaign, said this: "It's not that we knew about this specific case, but he's a wealthy, famous football player who's obviously spreading his seed," said the strategist, granted anonymity to discuss internal party discussions. Let me give you more. There's Liz Mayer, who is a Republican opposition researcher. She is not involved with Herschel Walker's campaign, but she does remember hearing people talking about how he paid for someone's abortion long ago, as far back as 2021. She says, quote, "I remember hearing about this very early and thinking it was like a classic Oppo hit. This abortion thing, I heard. Having more kids than he was copying to, I heard. And all of this was before we got to the point of him being the Republican candidate. I had heard about the alleged liabilities and abortion was top of the list. So they knew, they didn't care, they did not care. Okay, let that sink in. As they're celebrating the stripping of women's bodily autonomy by our Supreme Court, as they're pretending to be the righteous ones who are allegedly saving babies, they're also promoting and pushing for a man who paid for his ex-girlfriend's abortion to be the Republican candidate in the Senate race in Georgia. They knew, they didn't care because they don't care. They've never cared. Again, abortion is never, the debate around it is never really about abortion. It's all a game, it's all about power. And I really need people to understand that. Now, if you happen to be religious, if you happen to feel uncomfortable with abortion, you think that a zygote or a fetus is the equivalent of an independent, living, breathing human life, great, I disagree with you. I just do, I disagree with you. But you get to make decisions about your own body. Well, I mean, unless you're in a red state right now. In that case, you don't if you're a woman. Let's just keep it real. But for religious folks who genuinely buy into this, you do get to make the decision to not have an abortion, to not take birth control, to live your life as a pious, in your mind, individual. But that shouldn't seep into policy, and that shouldn't seep into the private lives of other individuals who might not believe in your religious doctrine. The idea of controlling other people's bodies based on the political schemes of these disgusting politicians who can't wait to get their D wet with their patients. Not interested in that. That's what Republicans are. Let's keep it real. We gotta take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show, everyone. I am Sock in our members section asks a question. Where are all of the Democrat opposition researchers? I am Sock, they exist. And if you wanna know what it looks like when Democrats employ opposition researchers during campaigns, just take a good hard look at what happens to progressives when they're running against corporate incumbents, corporate Democrats who happen to be incumbents in these congressional seats or congressional races. So they exist, trust me. By the way, it sounds like a really fun job. Like, I think I'd be really good at that job. I would enjoy it. Let's talk about Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh has a long history of defending the use of violence to accomplish political goals. How do I know that? Well, Media Matters just put out a pretty explosive report documenting some of his previous statements from a radio show that he used to be involved in. So he was working at WZBH and seems like he wanted to kind of goad the Tea Party to think outside the box when it came to accomplishing some political goals of theirs. So he gave a speech at a Tea Party event some years ago. You're about to watch a snippet of it. Let's watch.
Our founding fathers had very specific goals in mind that they wanted to accomplish. It wasn't a generalized sense of outrage. It was, these are our goals that we want to accomplish. And by the way, they were willing to back it up with guns and violent force. If you want extreme things to happen, you have to be willing to go to extremes. The civil rights movement, they had specific goals. They boycotted. The people that were oppressing them, they made them hurt. They didn't just hold signs, they made them hurt. So I would say that it's time for extreme measures. I'm not advocating violence, but why are we limiting ourselves? I'm just posing one possibility here. Let's say that next tax day, what if 10 million people didn't file their taxes? What if 10? I know everyone's like, well, you got to file your taxes. Well, our founding fathers, everyone keeps bringing up our founding fathers. They were willing to pick up guns and kill people for what they wanted. A sign won't do it, and calling your congressman won't do it.
Okay, I mean, he mentioned they picked up their guns. They had to get extreme. And then he puts in that little statement about like, what if 10 million people don't pay their taxes? 10 million people will get a letter from the IRS with demands to pay their taxes, to file their tax returns. And if they don't, they will probably end up in prison for refusing to pay their taxes. That's what will happen, even if it's 10 million people. So it's interesting, because you can make a point that, I mean, he might be suggesting violence. Maybe he's suggesting violence, but he didn't just say it. But he repeats certain things on his show, even back in the day, even back in 2010. So let's go to his repeated thinly veiled incitement of violence on the radio show. Let's watch that.
We've been on this path for 100 years or more. We probably lost our republic after Reconstruction. If you want actual change that isn't going to reverse itself in 10 years or 5 years or in 1 year, then you do have to look at extreme action. And I will tell you the extreme action that I am now referring to. What needs to happen, I think, first and foremost, and it starts with taxes, doesn't it? It started that way with the revolutionaries. And by the way, you go to these tea parties, you got people there literally dressed up like it's a costume party, dressed up like our founding fathers, dressed up like Samuel Adams and so forth. They're the ones that keep harkening back to the revolutionary times. You're the ones, Tea Party people, that are comparing yourself in a not subtle way at all to the revolutionaries.
But then you forget what they did to accomplish their goals.
Right, I'm saying, okay, you guys are dressing up like revolutionaries, you're calling this the Tea Party. Don't you understand what they did? Even the Tea Party was an illegal act. It was trespassing and vandalism. Don't you get that? Okay, you don't compare yourself to them because you're not willing to do what they did.
Fascinating that he seems to be a proponent of trespassing and vandalism when it suits the political ambitions that he's in favor of. But if there are protests that get a little out of hand and there might be some looters who co-opt that demonstration, and it's for an issue that he doesn't care about, like, ensuring that cops don't use brutal force and excessive force on people, then all of a sudden it's unacceptable. Those extreme measures, unacceptable. But again, he just quickly mentioned the tax thing, and then he moved on to how, the Tea Party, they took extreme measures. They took extreme measures. Again, the idea that an extreme measure is just not paying your taxes is laughable. That's not, but there's a reason why he says it. I think that it's to point to something, and no, I wasn't suggesting violence, I was suggesting don't pay your taxes. I mean, I slipped that in, but most of my commentary was about extreme measures, like using violence, like picking up guns and using violence. And it's no surprise that Matt Walsh provides cover for the violent rioters in the nation's capital on January 6th, because he sees that and he's like, finally, this is what I've been calling for, this is what I want. Right? He doesn't find it objectionable. He doesn't find it problematic. That's why they provide cover for that terrible, terrible activity that day, for that riot that took place that day. Riots are totally fine for Matt Walsh. Again, as long as he believes in the political message or the political pursuit taking place during that riot. But if there's rioting or looting in response to police brutality, unacceptable. These people are thugs, according to Matt Walsh. These people need to be put away, according to Matt Walsh. It is fascinating, isn't it? Now, Walsh additionally encouraged subordinates, interns, literal interns, to participate in some pretty sexually demeaning stunts. And so Media Matters had unearthed that. And it's not fun to watch, to be honest with you guys. So there was an intern who he used a stun gun on during his show. Gonna give you a warning, not fun to watch, but nonetheless, let's take a look.
For the comedy of it, and also because that will hurt the least, I think we should shock you in the ass. At least at first.
I think we should shock you.
No, I don't like that idea, but I do like a shocking you in the ass, so get over here.
I thought you were my friend.
We are, that's why we're doing it.
1, 2, 3, go. Ow! Ow!
Did it shock you too?
Oh.
Wait, I only got like half a second.
That's all you're supposed to get.
Let's try it one more time.
That hurts.
You want me to hold on to you while we do it?
That hurts.
Let's just try it once in the ass.
Maybe off the ass. Oh, wait, no.
Go, turn around. Ready?
God, I don't know if we can put this on the blog section.
You got video of this?
Yeah, I got video. Hold on, let me zoom in. No, I don't know if I want to
2,
zoom in.
3, go.
You got a pimply pale ass, bro.
Go. Ow, 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 ow.
I mean, conservatives are right. What's happening to our culture, you know? There's a real big problem with our culture. You've got men taking their pants down in the workplace. You've got them abusing each other in private regions of their bodies. What's going on? I mean, it's just so gross. But if you think that's bad, wait till you get a load of Matt Walsh justifying the idea of 16-year-olds getting pregnant. 16-year-olds used to get pregnant all the time, Matt Walsh says. In fact, women are the most fertile between the ages of 16 and 24, Matt Walsh said during the broadcast, which we're about to show you a snippet of. So let's take a quick look at that.
Teen pregnancy is a new problem.
Yes.
In the sense that it's only recently that we decided that it is a problem. Recently, in the last 30 years or so, we decided that that's way too young to start a family.
Why?
And because now
divorce rates would probably go up, and once you're that young, you can't really make sure that you know.
No, girls are no.
Because girls were getting married early, and marriages were lasting longer. You very rarely hear about like these relationships that go to their your diamond anniversary, your 50th anniversary, and all this. That's a dying breed of people out there.
Yeah, and those were all people that got married very young. That's why
they're still alive.
Yeah, that's why you can have someone in their 70s who's celebrating their 55th wedding anniversary because they got married when they were teenagers. So what I'm saying is that the problem is not per se teenage pregnancy, it's unwed pregnancy. That's the problem in society.
The problem in society is that we have a problem with 16-year-olds getting pregnant. We need to maybe rethink that, according to Matt Walsh. That was bonkers. I want to make a quick point about the idea that marriages lasted longer back in the day. I mean, if you go way back in the country's history when it was incredibly difficult to get divorced, then maybe you'd have to be stuck in a terrible marriage because of how difficult it was to get divorced. Maybe you can argue that that point was correct. However, the idea that divorces are happening more frequently now because people are getting married later in life is insane. And in fact, if you look at the states that happen to have the highest divorce rates, they're all liberal states. They're all coastal elites, except they're not. They're not. So let's look at the latest data. This was released by the CDC, and it's in regard to divorce rates between 2019 and 2020. This is the latest data. And so the number that you see represented next to the states is the number of divorces per capita, okay, per 1,000 marriages. Wyoming, number one at 3.8 divorces per 1,000 marriages. Alabama comes in at number 2 with 3.7, Arkansas 3.6, Oklahoma 3.5, Idaho 3.4, Utah 3.3. You guys get the picture. Then you have Mississippi, Tennessee, Alaska. You guys get it, right? By the way, I could have kept going because the next several states are still red states. Because guess what? When you're 16, you don't even know who you are yet. Look, all the 16-year-olds who might be watching the show right now, I love you. I remember when I first started working at the show when I was 20, and audience members were like, "You're too young. You don't know what you're talking about." And I would get so offended by that. Like, I do know what I'm talking about. Now I look back and I look at who I was at 20, and it was a completely different person. You grow up, you mature. The idea that it's good for 16-year-olds to get pregnant is insane. And by the way, I think it would be insane if you lived in a society that actually took care of its people, that actually had a system in place where everyone is made whole regardless of what kind of circumstance they find themselves in. We don't live in that country. We live in America that has no safety net. So the idea that a 16-year-old girl getting pregnant is a good idea, is insane to me, because we already live in an economy where you need to have both people, both parents, working full time to make ends meet. What's a 16-year-old without a high school education, without a high school degree supposed to do? Where is she supposed to work? How is she supposed to provide for her child? No, it's like insane thinking. But this is what they salivate over. Just rewinding, undoing any progress that we've seen in the country. By the way, I know Matt Walsh has kids. I don't know if he has a daughter, but does he want his 16-year-old daughter to get pregnant? If that happened, would he be like, this is normal, this is good. This is when she's most fertile. And by the way, just shut up. And how about don't get involved in whether or not other people have kids and when they have kids? It's none of your goddamn business. He's just super creepy. There's something super creepy about people who literally spend time thinking about what other people should do in their sex lives or what other people should decide in regard to their reproduction or whether or not they have children. Again, it's none of your business. But the fact that he's so obsessed about it really makes one wonder, like, what is it? What is it about any progress that we've had in this country that makes him so uncomfortable? And I don't know, man, I really don't want to take advice about when to procreate from a guy who seems to get his rocks off by tasing an intern in the ass. Not interested in that. We go from one lunatic to the next. Lunatics all around today. Let's go to the state of Michigan. The Republican candidate for Colorado's gubernatorial race is now taking photos of kids, literal children, that she suspects of being furries. So we spoke about Heidi Ganahl just yesterday, and she had decided to share her panic over this idea that high school campuses are installing litter boxes in their bathrooms to accommodate students who identify as furries, as animals. Now, that's insanity. And it led to a school district coming out and saying, no, this is not happening, this is insane. But nonetheless, she wanted to provide evidence, okay? And I'll talk about that evidence in just a moment, but just a quick reminder of how much of a lunatic this woman is.
Not many people know that we have furries in Colorado schools. Have you heard about this, Jimmy? Mm-hmm. Yeah, kids identifying as cats. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it's happening all over Colorado, and schools are tolerating it. It's insane. What on earth are we doing? Knock it off. Schools, put your foot down. Like, stop it. Let's get back to teaching basics and not allow this woke ideological stuff infiltrate our schools. And it is happening here in Colorado. It's why I moved from Boulder Valley to Douglas County, because it was happening in my kids' schools 4 years ago.
I just love that this woman who's spouting the dumbest nonsense I've heard, and that's saying something because I cover dumb nonsense on a daily basis. I love the idea that she's giving people advice on how we should educate kids. Maybe you need to get an education. Someone this gullible and this stupid probably shouldn't be running for office, that's for sure. I mean, she's the Republican candidate. She is the Republican candidate for governor in Colorado, and she thinks kids are like squatting on litter boxes in school bathrooms to tinkle. She's crazy. But if you think that's crazy, she goes further. She wants to provide proof. She's like, no, I want to prove that this is real. This is real. We should all panic about this. We shouldn't panic about extreme poverty. We shouldn't panic about the hundreds of thousands of homeless people in this country. We shouldn't panic about people getting evicted from their homes or the economic instability they're facing. No, the real issue today, everyone, is furries and children tinkling in school litter boxes. Unacceptable, we need to do something. She wants to provide proof, so she's going around taking pictures of kids that she suspects are furries.
A couple months ago.
What? Like what? Listen, I don't have kids. I can't even imagine what I would want to do to anyone who's harassing my children and taking pictures of them to accuse them of being furries, but that is what she's doing. So how do we know about this? So Kyle Clark, who's with Colorado's 9 News, reported this. Today, Heidi Ganahl confirmed to KNUS host George Brochler that her campaign is collecting and distributing photos of children they believe are identifying as animals. We provided pictures, but we blurred out the faces, Ganahl said. Doesn't matter, you're still a creep. Don't go around taking pictures of kids because you suspect they might be furries, because you fell for a stupid hoax about litter boxes in school bathrooms. I can't, she's a grown ass woman, and this is literally what she's doing. She's running a campaign for governor of Colorado, and she's chasing down kids and taking pictures of them. This is how you protect the children? You protect the children by harassing them and taking pictures of them? It's so incredibly creepy. They go around accusing teachers of being groomers while simultaneously raising their hands and admitting that they're creepily taking pictures of minors, so they can make all sorts of ridiculous accusations against them. It's unclear how the Ganahl campaign is confirming that the individual children in the photos they are distributing identify as animals, as opposed to simply dressing up in cat ears or other type of animal costumes. It is, by the way, October, and schools do end up having Halloween events. So I hope conservatives can handle that. Okay, I hope you guys don't panic about it. It's okay. Halloween is an annual celebration. Kids love to get involved. Sometimes they dress up as monsters. Doesn't mean that they're actually monsters. They might dress up like Dracula. Doesn't mean that they're gonna come suck your blood. I mean, I don't know. I feel like we need to explain the basics to these literal lunatics. Ganahl said her campaign is providing the photos they've collected to journalists. When 9 News asked for proof of her claim last week, a Ganahl spokeswoman provided a screenshot of a photo of someone in a furry costume, which appeared to be from a conservative parents' Facebook group. Middle-aged women should be banned from Facebook. Let me go further. Just mothers. Mothers should be banned from Facebook. They just should. It does nothing but harm them. They start buying into insane conspiracy theories. It's a vicious cycle of paranoia. Just stop. Log off. Take a walk. Take a walk with your kids. Go to the movies with your kids. Go hang out with friends. Get off the internet. The internet is rotting people's brains to an extent that I would have never imagined before. The idea that there's like a conservative mom's Facebook page where they're like distributing creepy photos of children that they suspect are furries, you're actually the problem. If you're worried about keeping kids safe, you should think about how we can keep them safe from you. Okay? Denver's Jefferson County School District, which Ganahl singled out, refuted her comments saying, quote, "There is absolutely no truth to this claim." Can't believe they even had to put that statement out. There are no litter boxes in our buildings and students are not allowed to come to school in costume. There are no furries or students identifying as such during the school day, the district spokesperson told Colorado's Fox 31. If you're worried about inflation or any other substantive issue that's impacting your life day to day, definitely don't look at Republicans. Don't look at Republican candidates to help you, that's for sure. They're too busy taking creepy pictures of your kids. Gotta take a break. We'll be right back with more news, including Alex Jones being trash yet again. Yeah, I know you guys are waiting for the beat to drop. I know you are. It's Wednesday, so you're gonna get the best music on the show of the entire week. All right, and thank you to DJ Bart Kyle.
Thank you very much.
Well, how do you want to go by? What's your DJ name?
Sonic Dragon sounds pretty good.
DJ Sonic Dragon.
Or just Sonic Dragon. It was adopted. It was given to me by the Dragon Squad. Thank you. Sonic Dragon is good.
I'm into it. I like it. It's good. All right, well, let's talk about Alex Jones because the Sandy Hook trial continues. This is the trial to determine what he needs to pay in punitive and compensatory damages. And it's not going so well for him, as you can imagine. Alex Jones has decided to flee his own Sandy Hook related trial in a private jet to boycott the trial. Now, this is a trial to determine what he needs to pay the victims of Sandy Hook, the Sandy Hook massacre, because of the fact that he defamed them. He needs to pay compensatory and punitive damages to these families who he, again, defamed. And it hasn't been going so well for him. When he testifies, not a good look. When the parents that he defamed testify, also not a good look for Alex Jones. So he decided, I'm gonna run away from it. And by nature of me running away, the case is obviously gonna go away, right? Except it's not. So he learned about this through New York Times reporter Elizabeth Williamson, who tweeted, "Good morning from Waterbury, Connecticut, for the Alex Jones Sandy Hook damages trial. Rain and at least one big story today. Defendant packed up his entourage and fled on a private jet." Wow, interesting. Private jet for a dude who wanted to file for bankruptcy. Anyway, I'll continue. So not looking likely he'll testify or yell on the courthouse steps today, which we couldn't cover anyway. Pattis, Jones's lawyer, wants to instruct the jury that Jones is chosen to boycott the trial because, in essence, he can't say what he wants because it's against the rules. Judge not having any of that, rightly saying she can't address his thought process. Now look, if I were Alex Jones and I were also a massive piece of garbage, I probably wouldn't enjoy sitting there listening to all the testimony. I wouldn't enjoy being cross-examined by the plaintiff's attorney. It would suck, it really would. But most people don't go out of their way to make money and earn profits through defaming victims who had lost their little children in a mass shooting. Only, sociopaths are into that. So the sociopath had a difficult time handling what was transpiring during a trial where he absolutely deserves everything that's been happening to him. And there was some testimony that I think is worth sharing with you just recently, featuring Mark Barden. Mark Barden lost his little boy, Daniel, in the Sandy Hook shooting. And he testified about the kinds of threats he received, he and his family received as a result of Alex Jones defaming them and saying that they're crisis actors, that the Sandy Hook shooting wasn't real, that it was a false flag. Again, imagine having a child who dies as a result of a terrible, tragic mass shooting. That's bad enough. But rather than receive sympathy, you receive an unending wave of harassment and death threats toward you and your family. And that's what he's been dealing with. And some of the threats had to do with his son's grave, literal grave. And he testifies about that in the next video.
Our little Natalie had learned of one of the letters that came to our mailbox that said they were going to dig up Daniel's grave. And to hear that people were desecrating it and urinating on it and threatening to dig it up. I don't know how to articulate to you what that feels like, but that's where we are.
Imagine urinating on a 7-year-old's grave because a piece of garbage you listen to has somehow convinced you that a mass shooting was fake. It was a phony hoax. I can't imagine having that kind of mind, that kind of brain that justifies doing that to anyone's grave. But think about it, 7-year-old boy slaughtered in a mass shooting, and they think it's a good idea to do this. They were threatening to dig up his grave. Alex Jones is one of the worst people in this country. Just no remorse for what he did, no shame whatsoever, has decided to use the trial. I mean, not anymore because he's now boycotting it. I mean, use the trial to promote his show and the nonsense supplements that he had been slanging on his show, Instahard, whatever it is. no shame. I can't imagine being so disconnected from reality and so sociopathic that the only thing that matters to you is just making more money off of other people's tragedies and off of defaming other people, off of defaming victims, defaming parents who lost their children in a mass shooting. I can't imagine that, but he exists. This is who he is. And he's got a massive audience that loves him, that latches onto every word, who think he's some sort of patriot. Really? Patriots go around terrorizing fellow Americans after they've lost their children in a mass shooting? That's what they do? After Daniel's death, Mark Barden posted a video online of himself and his 3 kids playing What a Wonderful World. They actually performed that for their grandfather. Daniel was on the drums and kept really good time, he testified. The video was soon flooded with comments threatening the family and calling them actors. In fact, they got into that during the trial. I want to give you a few examples. Let's watch.
My only question is, who do you serve, Barden family? God sees all. Sure, I'm scared for our country, but I'm even more worried about the souls of the corrupt. Do yourself a favor and confess your misdeeds. LOL. This is so fake. They don't even remember what year their son died in. You couldn't possibly support a family on that guitar playing, dude. The whole thing is as phony as a $3 bill. Such a coincidence that so many of these parents are wannabe musicians and wannabe actors. Quote, our kids died, so please give us all money. LOL. You have a nice comment here. And then right under it, 2 years ago. What a sick charade. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
This is what they do. This is what they do. That's why I don't post anything about my family on social media anymore. Because they swarm in and say disgusting, abusive things about your family members, about your personal life. Even if it's a sweet, wholesome video, as was the case here with Barden's family, with his children performing a song for their grandfather on his birthday. I again, have a difficult time understanding, valuing money that much that you knowingly engage in causing pain and suffering toward people who are already struggling with the loss of their dead children. And that's who Alex Jones is. He doesn't care. Again, no remorse. And I'm curious what happens. I mean, ordinary people don't get to just boycott their trial. Oh, this is an inconvenience. I'm uncomfortable. I'm gonna boycott it. He should just be in jail at this point. Honestly, this guy does not give a damn about the law. He doesn't care about the path of destruction he has left behind and continues to move forward with. This is just who he is. And I wanna know, like, how far can he go? Really, can anyone just hop onto a private jet and decide, I'm gonna boycott my trial? Give the judge the middle finger, call her all sorts of insane names. That's what he's been doing. He's not supposed to talk about the court proceedings. He does it all the time. He breaks every rule. And so far, the only consequence I've seen is the default ruling on defamation because he refused to cooperate with the trial. But at some point, if he's gonna keep communicating to everyone that he thinks he's above the law, shouldn't someone let him know that he isn't above the law? Or is it just gonna keep going on this way? He's just so gross. And I will never, ever backtrack or reverse what I said about him getting banned on various platforms. Free speech is important. Inciting violence toward victims of a mass shooting, not protected speech under any circumstance, even in our Constitution. So cry me a goddamn river about how he's not on Twitter anymore. Don't care. Got to take a break. When we come back, Jordan Yule will be here. We'll talk about some more stories, including a suspicious cop death in Los Angeles. They claim that it was an accident. He might have been beaten up by his own police officers. We've got that story and more coming right up.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.